readiness assessment is the critical dress rehearsal before your SOC 2 audit. It's not about passing or failing, it's about discovery, correction, and confidence. The assessment evaluates your organization's current controls, policies, and evidence against the SOC 2 Trust Services criteria, revealing where maturity is strong and where gaps remain. Its purpose is to establish a clear, actionable baseline so that by the time the CPA firm begins fieldwork, your controls are fully operational and well documented. Conducting readiness 6 months or more before the audit allows time to close gaps methodically rather than reactively. The result is a smoother, more predictable audit experience that validates both design and operation without the stress of last-minute remediation. Timing and objectives define the success of readiness planning. Ideally, readiness begins half a year before the Type I or Type II audit start date, giving teams ample time to remediate deficiencies, validate new evidence, and strengthen weak control areas. The assessment evaluates 3 dimensions: control design, control ownership, and evidence sufficiency. Findings are mapped to the selected trust services categories: security, availability, confidentiality, processing integrity, and privacy, ensuring alignment with your intended SOC 2 scope. The output is a prioritized roadmap guiding remediation workstreams. This preparation not only accelerates audit fieldwork, but also builds operational discipline that persists beyond attestation. A sound readiness methodology combines structured mapping with hands-on testing. Start by aligning existing controls to SOC 2 criteria, identifying which requirements are covered and where gaps exist. Conduct interviews with control owners to confirm process understanding, review documentation for completeness, and perform limited sampling to test evidence sufficiency. Rate each control's maturity on a standardized scale, such as initial, defined, implemented, and optimized. Document risks, gaps, and recommendations for every control. The deliverable should be comprehensive yet practical, a roadmap that connects current state performance to specific actions that achieve audit readiness. Scoping confirmation often uncovers overlooked dependencies. During readiness, revisit your system boundaries, what services, systems, and data flows are included, and validate that these match customer commitments and contractual obligations. Identify in-scope data paths, third-party services, and supporting systems like ticketing or monitoring tools. Reconfirm which trust services categories apply and whether your initial target is a Type 1, design only, or Type 2, operating effectiveness report. Scope alignment early prevents costly realignments later and ensures every control tested during readiness corresponds precisely to what will be audited. Evidence sampling is the diagnostic test of readiness. Request representative artifacts for each control domain, tickets, screenshots, logs, policy documents, and verify they are sufficient, authentic, and traceable. Test operation where feasible. For example, perform a mock access review or simulate a change request. Look for weak spots, such as missing timestamps, inconsistent metadata, or evidence stored in personal drives rather than a centralized repository. Patterns of incomplete or stale evidence often reveal underlying process issues. Addressing them now avoids the frustration of evidence rejection during audit fieldwork when remediation time is limited. A well-structured gap analysis report transforms findings into strategy. Organize results by domain, priority, and trust services category. Each finding should describe the gap, the associated risk, and a recommendation for closure. Assign an owner and a target date for each remediation item. Include visual summaries, heat maps, or dashboards highlighting overall readiness by category and control maturity. This report becomes your working document for leadership updates and auditor discussions, showing that issues are documented, owned, and under control. When treated as a living artifact, it evolves from a list of problems into a transparent plan of progress. Remediation planning turns insight into execution. Classify each gap as procedural, missing or outdated process, technical, configuration or tooling issue, or documentation-related, policy or narrative incomplete. Assign each gap to a named control owner with a defined due date and escalation path. Use ticketing or GRC tools to track progress, maintaining visibility through dashboards that show closure rates and overdue tasks. Escalate significant delays to leadership or a program management office to keep momentum. Structured remediation management proves to auditors that gaps are not just identified, they're actively being resolved through traceable governance. Distinguishing between quick wins and structural fixes helps balance urgency and effort. Quick wins include actions like completing missing approval fields, standardizing naming conventions, or centralizing evidence folders. Low-effort improvements with immediate compliance value. Structural fixes are larger initiatives, such as implementing a new identity management system or automating backups, which may take months but yield long-term control strength. Prioritize based on risk and audit feasibility. Address the critical gaps that would most likely generate findings, then plan the rest as part of continuous improvement. Documenting both categories maintains visibility and prevents audit myopia, where only short-term fixes receive attention. Policy and narrative creation fills the documentation layer that ties operations to governance. Draft or update policies to reflect actual practices, aligning each with SOC 2 control areas. For every new or revised policy, create matching control narratives written in measurable terms. Who performs the action, how often, and where evidence resides. Validate these narratives against real operations to avoid disconnects between documentation and practice. Store policies, narratives, and supporting artifacts in a version-controlled repository to maintain historical traceability. Clear documentation assures auditors that management direction, operational execution, and evidence integrity all align. Evidence repository readiness is another hallmark of audit maturity. Establish a clear folder hierarchy organized by trust services category, control ID, and artifact type. Define naming conventions that embed metadata, control number, date, and source system. Verify access restrictions so that only authorized personnel can modify or upload files. Preload validated examples into the repository for auditor review, labeling them as readiness samples. This structure transforms the evidence library from a shared drive into an auditable control environment of its own, reducing friction when the real audit begins. Vendor and sub-service coverage is often underestimated during readiness. Verify that all third-party providers critical to in-scope systems have valid assurance reports or bridge letters covering your audit period. Update the vendor register with report types, expiration dates, and key commitments. Confirm that contractual agreements include confidentiality and security clauses consistent with your SOC 2 obligations. Define complementary user entity controls, CUECs, for each subservice and verify your own responsibilities for those dependencies. Integrate vendors into the remediation plan when their documentation or reports require updates, ensuring full supply chain assurance coverage. Leadership alignment ensures readiness efforts remain visible and resourced. Present findings and remediation plans to executives, emphasizing risk-based priorities and upcoming deadlines. Confirm that budgets and staff are available to implement technical and procedural fixes. Establish agreement on acceptable residual risk levels. What gaps, if any, can remain open before the audit. Draft a management commitment letter capturing this shared understanding. Leadership buy-in transforms readiness from a compliance project into an organizational priority, reinforcing accountability at every level. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Testing repeatability is one of the most telling indicators of true audit readiness. A mature program can reproduce any control activity and its supporting evidence at will. Conduct mock walkthroughs where evidence owners simulate auditor interviews, explaining the control, locating artifacts, and demonstrating how the process operates. Track how long it takes to fulfill each mock request. Slow or inconsistent responses indicate that documentation or ownership needs tightening. Confirm that evidence can be regenerated directly from systems of record, not just retrieved from shared folders. Automate wherever possible. Recurring exports, API-based evidence polls, and scheduled snapshots all reinforce that readiness isn't an event but a repeatable process that supports continuous assurance. Internal audit, or second-line validation, provides an impartial checkpoint before external fieldwork begins. After remediation activities close, independent reviewers retest a sample of controls to verify that fixes are complete and effective. Each retest should mirror the auditor's approach, reviewing documentation, sampling artifacts, and confirming control operation. Record test results and store proof of closure, including screenshots, logs, or ticket IDs showing resolved issues. Archiving the final readiness report establishes an audit trail of continuous improvement, demonstrating that your organization doesn't just prepare for audits, it validates, verifies, and documents readiness through a disciplined internal assurance loop. Change management readiness is often overlooked but critical. Large system updates or migrations during the readiness window can jeopardize evidence consistency. Establish a change freeze period before your Type 1 snapshot or Type 2 start date to lock in system configurations. For unavoidable updates, maintain transparent documentation of what changed, why, and how it was validated. Schedule maintenance windows outside audit-critical periods whenever possible. This foresight preserves traceability across the audit boundary, ensuring that system evidence represents a stable, verified environment. Training and awareness prepare people as much as technology. Staff should understand how to communicate with auditors, what evidence they own, and the scope boundaries of the audit. Conduct readiness workshops and distribute quick reference guides outlining common interview questions and documentation expectations. Reinforce the importance of accuracy, never guessing or speculating when answering auditor queries. Cross-functional teams, from HR to engineering, must grasp their part in the overall story. When every employee involved in control execution can articulate purpose and process, the organization projects confidence and credibility that auditors immediately recognize. Metrics and reporting turn readiness into a measurable discipline. Track the number of identified gaps versus those closed, showing momentum over time. Measure the percentage of controls with sufficient evidence preloaded into repositories. Assign each domain or trust services category a readiness score based on control maturity and evidence sufficiency. Combine these into a single confidence index reflecting overall audit preparedness. Present these metrics to leadership in regular dashboards, reinforcing accountability and showcasing progress. Quantifying readiness shifts perception from vague preparation to data-driven assurance. Common pitfalls in readiness efforts are remarkably consistent across industries. Many organizations underestimate how much evidence auditors expect or fail to confirm traceability between policy and proof. Others neglect formal sign-offs for remediation closures, leaving ambiguity over whether issues were fully resolved. In some cases, overlapping or conflicting documentation creates confusion that auditors must sort out later. The remedy lies in governance and quality assurance. Use standardized templates for policies and narratives. Maintain clear naming conventions and require QA reviews for every closure item. Readiness isn't about volume of evidence, it's about quality, consistency, and traceable alignment to the control framework. The concept of continuous readiness elevates this discipline from a pre-audit exercise to a year-round mindset. Instead of treating readiness as a one-time event, integrate checkpoints into quarterly cycles. Each quarter, verify that control owners have refreshed evidence, tested automation, and closed emergent gaps. Adopt rolling remediation sprints focused on subsets of controls rather than attempting to fix everything at once. Track evidence currency, how recently each artifact was generated, and flag items exceeding defined freshness thresholds. This rolling cadence reduces audit fatigue, spreads effort evenly across the year, and ensures that by the time auditors arrive, the environment is already in a state of sustained compliance. Cross-framework reuse turns readiness investments into multipliers. Map your SOC 2 control set against ISO 27001, NIST 853, or CIS controls, noting where evidence overlaps. A vulnerability management dashboard, for instance, can serve as proof for multiple frameworks if properly labeled and versioned. Store reusable artifacts in a central repository tagged with framework identifiers. When your next audit or certification cycle begins, existing readiness data provides a head start, eliminating redundant collection and reducing costs. Harmonized evidence not only strengthens SOC 2 outcomes, but also accelerates compliance maturity across your entire assurance ecosystem. Governance and ownership transform readiness from a compliance sprint into a sustainable program. Define clear roles. A readiness program manager oversees scheduling and reporting. Control owners maintain evidence and respond to findings. Executive sponsors provide budget and escalation authority. Implement a ROSI matrix showing who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for each readiness activity. Schedule quarterly leadership reviews to discuss metrics, risks, and resource needs. Embedding readiness governance into standard operations ensures continuity even as personnel or systems change, preserving institutional knowledge and consistent performance. Maturity in readiness evolves through recognizable phases. Early programs treat readiness as a one-time project, scrambling before each audit. Mature organizations shift to continuous readiness controls, monitored, evidence refreshed, and metrics tracked year-round. Integration with GRC tools adds automation, enabling real-time dashboards of control health. The most advanced organizations achieve predictive assurance, where analytics highlight potential compliance risks before they surface as findings. In this state, readiness is no longer a preparatory phase. It's the default operating mode of the enterprise. Evidence expectations from a readiness assessment are concrete and auditable. Retain the final readiness report summarizing gaps, closures, and recommendations. Maintain a tracking sheet or GRC dashboard showing each remediation item and closure artifact. Update control narratives and policies to reflect the new steady state. Keep sample evidence validated and time-stamped ready for auditor review, clearly labeled as pre-approved readiness artifacts. This complete evidence package not only accelerates fieldwork, but also demonstrates that management owns and understands its control environment. In conclusion, readiness assessments and gap closure activities are the linchpin of a successful SOC 2 journey. They convert uncertainty into structure, transforming reactive compliance into proactive assurance. Readiness aligns people, processes, and technology well before the audit clock starts, ensuring that every commitment made in policy is backed by real, tested performance. Early detection, structured remediation, and continuous validation create a culture where audit ready isn't an annual milestone but a standing condition. The next episode focuses on translating that readiness into seamless execution, how to coordinate fieldwork, manage requests, and maintain calm precision once the auditors arrive.